ADD family. It's me, Mike, once again. Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming to my channel. I really appreciate it. I don't know what the hell's going on. So today I decided to come out with my best coincidence. Probably the best that I could ever dream or think of. This is my best one yet. So let me get right into it and let's bring it back. So this what had happened when I was in jail, like I've mentioned before. I was in jail for spanking my kids with a belt. I went to jail once and I went to jail for 2 months and was bonded out. Part of my bond condition was to stay away from my wife, so I violated, and my family came off my bond, and a bondsman came and hunted me down, and I had to turn myself in, and I went back to jail and did another 6 months. On the first go around, when I first got there, I was in, as I've explained before, what they called maximum security. That was Supermax. I was in Supermax first and then regular max. There were 2 pods in the dorm that were all violent and felonies. So there were 2 worst dorms out of the entire jail. And K pod was the worst dorm out of the entire jail. There was K and L pod. K was Supermax and L was felony as well, but it was only regular max. It was only maximum security. K pod they called Supermax. It was where the worst of the worst were. And I guess they looked at me upon as the worst because it looked like I beat the shit out of my son, but I didn't. As I've explained before, I was going to spank him on his ass, and he buried his face in the carpet and went like this, fighting me to keep me from spanking him, and gave himself rug burn. So it looked a lot worse than it really was, but I did leave a belt mark. I own up to that. So, the first time I was in, I met this guy, Mike Adams. Me and Mike get close, we get tight, we become best of friends, right? He was that guy, we all clicked with someone. He was like my buddy, my best friend, the really only person I had at the time. We clicked, we hit it off. He was an ADD guy too. He happened to know Elmer Pence. And if you don't know who Elmer Pence is, he's a guy I was in boot camp with, who recently, a few months ago, I seen on one of these news stations that Elmer got in a shitload of trouble. A cop caught up to him, and he grabbed the cop's arm. The cop reached in, and while the cop reached in, he grabbed his arm and dragged the cop 20 feet down the road. Elmer Pence did this. You can look it up. So he was friends with Elmer. He had gone to school with him, so Elmer was a lot of our stories. His stories he was telling me. Mike was a few years older than me, but we became best of friends very quickly. When I get out, he comes and the night I get out, he comes and picks me up and takes me to a friend of his, and just to get out of my parents' house. He came and picked me up the day I got out. He picked me up Friday and Saturday, and we went out drinking and partying. My first weekend out, in the first few weeks, first month or so out of jail, he was picking me up. We were partying on the weekends, so we become real close. Then I even wind up moving in with him, and so I live with him now at this apartment in Marietta. 30067 is the area, the zip code, but I can't remember the exact address. 1354. I don't even remember. But keep. Let's just say 1354. Keep that number in your head. His address was say 1354. Marietta, Georgia, 30067. Right. Well, I'm right before I move in. I haven't seen or spoken with my wife for over 3 months, and her cousin got us in touch with one another, and so I spoke to my wife for the first time in 3 months, right? She was in a women's facility / rehab, halfway home, getting her life straightened out, and that's where she had to go when I went to jail. And so she had this address, right? So she's living in the. I just meet up with her after 3 months. The day I do, well, actually, it was a Saturday. She went and got a visit. She went to her cousin's wife's house. Her cousin Heather is Will's stepmom. Heather's brother's name is Bobby. Bobby's ex-wife's name was Linda. The girl was batshit crazy, for real. She's Bobby's ex-wife now. She left, and that's another whole story. But Linda had was in cahoots with both of us. She came and saw me at the jail, so she was in touch with my family for the kids' sake, and she was in touch with my wife for their sake. So she tells me, my wife comes home on a visit one Saturday, and she's come to Linda's house, and they call me, and so I ran right to them, and hung out with my wife for the day, and hadn't seen her, spoke to her in 3 months, and so now we're trying to get back together, etc., and I take her back, and she goes back. Well, that night, I was staying at my parents' all the way up until then, and was staying the night at John's a lot, and staying at Mike's on the weekends. But the weekend that that my wife had gotten a pass to go home from this place. That was on a Saturday. After going and spending time with my wife and seeing her for the first time in many months, I moved out of my parents full-fledged and moved into Mike's now, because now I want to be closer to my wife, etc. She was closer to where Mike lived, so now I'm picking her up, and there's times she goes out and is looking for a job from this place, right? So she's out day hunting for a job. I'm picking her up and bringing her to work with me, and this is how we're starting to get back together. Keep in mind now, I'm still out on bond, so I still have to face this, having no idea what the future holds, and thinking I'm going to do some prison time for a year. So neither one of us were on our feet. We were on rocky ground. So we had to be careful, and like I said, I wasn't allowed to be around her, so if the law found out, I would have gone back to jail as we were breaking the law, just talking on the phone. So I would pick her up, we'd spend time together, take her back. She had to have somewhere she could go to, when I wasn't around, or be in jail. They help you get on your feet, help you get your kids back, that kind of stuff. And so she's at this rehab, and now we're writing each other letters. Okay, say now I don't remember the address, but it was like 777. There was 2 sevens in it. 777 Dunwoody, Georgia, 30045, whatever. So, you see what I'm saying? That exact address now, 777. It wasn't that, but I'm giving you an example because I don't remember exactly what it was. 777 Dunwoody, Georgia, in Woodlawn Terrace, whatever the apartment complex was called, right? And so I get the number in the building, the number 700, and it's something, right? So this is just one building out of this entire apartment complex, okay? Keep this in mind. So when I tell you like 777, that's a specific building and apartment number, okay? Now you're with me? So now I'm living at Mike's, and she's in this rehab, and we're writing each other letters, and so I'm writing back and forth from Mike's house to her rehab, right? 1354 Marietta, and 777 Dunwoody, on her end, right? This goes on for a couple of months, and then the shit hits the fan, and no, this doesn't even go on a couple of months, truthfully. This goes on about a month, and My family found out, so I don't want to get into all that specifics. But long story short, I had to go back to jail. I had to meet a bondsman. Came looking for me. Went to my parents. He called me from my parents. We were staying in a hotel at one time. We moved out of Mike's. We seen him coming at looking for us, right? And because once whoever called on him, my bond's revoked. So now I'm seeing this this black and white tinted out SUV. So it winds up being him. He chased me around for 2-3 days. I hid my vehicle. And we just stayed a step ahead of him for 2 or 3 days, and then he calls me, and I had to turn myself in the next day. So back to jail I go. I'm in jail, and now I can't talk to my wife because of the charges. I just call and hit a few buttons, says I love you, and so I'm in the jail. I've been in there several months now, right? And I pray to God, tell me what's going on with my wife. All this shit was going on in my head. She's cheating on me. She's not going to be there for me. Yada, yada, yada. I was, a man locked up's got a lot of uncertainty. Even for being married for 10, 15 years, you still never know. So I remember praying to God that my wife would be all right and she'd still be there when I got it back. Okay. Before all this, Mike had been to prison twice. Mike Adams. This is the guy I met in the jail, and I moved in with him and I moved out, but I lived with him for a couple of months. We were that tight. We lived together. He wanted to get me a job too. When he got me the job, it was in Roswell, okay? My wife was working where my wife's rehab was in Roswell. So God had aligned it to where I was driving by where her little rehab was. As I'm praying and thinking all this didn't happen until I got out of jail, though. When I got out the second time, he got me the job. But my wife, it happened to be right where my wife's rehab was. He was driving by where she was every day, and just like I assumed and suspected, these are other crazy ass coincidences, okay? This comes later on in the story. When I was in jail, way before this, I pray, and I'm writing, okay, and so now before this, Mike had told me previously, I don't write letters, and I don't come to jail, I don't see you. I love you, but I'll be here when you get out. I don't write letters, it's a bad omen, and I don't come to see people in county jails. Just my 2 rules. I said, okay, fair enough, bet. So, he winds up writing me a letter about halfway through. We're at like the 3-month and something, 4-month mark, okay? This guy had been to prison twice, who tells me he's definitely not going to write me a letter, winds up breaking his rule and writing me a letter, okay? I get this letter at this specific time, right? I get this letter, and I'm sitting it's on my night table, okay? When you're in jail in these cells, you have a 2-man bunk, right? You have a pisser and a shitter, which is connected to each other, and you have a table, and the table's right next to the bunk. The table is a steel piece of metal, a big piece of steel metal table, right? And it's got, say, just the desktop is, steel, and then it's got this bar, 2 bars, like a bar coming out of the wall, and the bar is, the support beam to the table. There's a bar that comes out that the table rests on, and there's a bar that comes out that the seat is on, right? But this thing is pretty much like one unit, and so I got his letter in front of me on my desk, right? I'm writing him back, and I'm writing my wife, And in the middle of me writing this letter, my wall starts getting banged on, right? The guy right next to me, this table goes into the wall, the beam that the table rests on goes into the wall, and the thing you're sitting on goes into the wall, and it comes out the other side. Okay, you see what I'm saying now? There, wherever that table is, the mounting and all that kind of stuff is mounted to the wall, to a cinder block wall, but there's the exact same one on the other side of the wall. Now you see what I'm saying? They're mounted together through the wall. You and the table in your unit, and on the block wall on the other side of the wall is another table just like it. Okay, but if I smack something or ding it, he can feel it on the other side. I'm just sitting there writing a letter, and I hear boom, 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 boom. I don't think nothing about it. I go back to writing my letter. Da 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 da. I'm at the doctor's office while I'm doing a video. Anyways, so the guy next door is beating and banging on the walls, and I beat back, and then my bunkmate says, "Nah, dude, chill out." And he explains to me, he said, "Dude, you're pissing him off." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Every time your pen hits that table, it makes a ding, 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 ding. So every time I'm going to write, my pen hits the table or pencil, it makes a ding, 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 ding." It's, imagine your pencil hitting a piece of metal, and it vibrates through the wall, and it whatever it's doing, it's pissing them off on the other side. It's making a ding noise. And so my bunkmate says, "No, dude." He said, "Let me tell you what to do." He says, "You're writing on it." He had been. This was my first time in this part of the jail. These were new tables. I didn't know this, but my bunkmate was way younger than me in there for graffitiing the town. But he had been in and out of the jail before they remodeled, and I hadn't. So he tells me, so he knew the deal and I didn't. He tells me, you need to get. He gives me a binder, like what you draw notes on, right? Like a clipboard, a hardback clipboard. You with me now? It's like a hardback that you can write on, and it's got a clip at the top that'll hold in a bunch of papers, and you can put a pencil up there. Now I know you know what I'm talking about. It's like clipboard. He hands it to me, and he said, "No, dude, write on this. That'll stop the dinging noise." I said, "Okay." I go and I grab the clipboard, and I put my paper on there, and when I do, there's my wife's address. 777 whatever Highland, the exact address, 777 whatever it was, Dunwoody, Georgia, apartment, yada yada. It was my wife's exact fucking address, down to the same fucking building, the same apartment. Okay, I see this, whatever it was, I had that drilled in my head. I'm going back 12 years now. This happened in 2000, and 2010. And so here is my wife's address on this this clipboard, just by coincidence. And I freak out, and I look at my bunkmate. I'm like, "What the fuck, dude? Why is this fucking address on here?" And I got fucking crazy. I just lost reality for a second, thinking that my bunkmate's fucking my wife, thinking all kind of crazy shit, And he said, "No, dude." He said, "No, man, chill out." He said, "I got that from upstairs, man. That's some Mexican chicks." I said, "Okay, that's believable, because as I've done videos and shown you before, it was very close to where I used to live, Sandy Springs. This is before then, but I know for a fact there's a lot of Mexicans in that area, so that added up. But the fact that my wife's address was on this clipboard, right staring me in the face, is, if that wasn't creepy enough, Mike Adams was the same day and time that his fucking letter that he never wrote no one before, and happened to coincidentally wrote me a letter at that same date and time, was sitting up on my table. So right here in my face is Mike Adams' address. Right here on the fucking clipboard is my wife's address, and you see the letter in the background in like your peripheral vision, and they line up, and I'm mind fucked. Okay, can you imagine those coincidences? Do you grasp what I'm telling you? These kind of odds. It was the exact same apartment complex and apartment number, and the same exact that place that she had been, the rehab. Someone from this jail had been previously, whatever, down to that fucking apartment. These two addresses happened to came up at the same day, time. Shit that could never possibly happen. Think about that. These two addresses are right next to each other as I'm sitting here praying. That let me know that's a coincidence that you can't. That's out of this world type shit. I'm still mind fucked to this day over it. Promise to God on everything I love in this world, I am not exaggerating a bit. These are two addresses with the same two addresses me and my wife were just previously writing each other from. Now Mike Adams has coincidentally sent me a letter right at the same date and time that I come up with this clipboard with my wife's rehab address. I can't make this up. I've given you my fucking word. Do you know anyone that has a coincidence like that? Can you grasp and fathom the coincidence, the odds here? If you really thought about it and broke it down, what is the percentage? One in billions? Not one in thousands, hundreds of thousands, not even millions. What's the odds of that happening? Two addresses coming across on my fucking night table at that very exact moment when I'm writing letters. They were both together right there out in the open. Crazy mind fuck. That was God telling me that he really does exist. And if you don't believe it, then I'm sorry for you. Shit like that's happened to me, and that's one in a billion. Those are twice the odds of lottery winnings. If you really break it down and think about it, this was my best one. I hope it gets out there. I hope it changes lives. I love you all. This is the AD Advocate. Pass on the message. Keep my movement alive. I love you. Stay ADD.